elite sports. It's literally the absolute pinnacle of human achievement, right? The apex of health and performance. But what happens when that peak physical perfection is shattered in just mere fractions of a second? Today, we're diving straight into this explainer on the science of how human bodies fail under extreme, totally unexpected stress. We're going to explore the brutal underlying mechanics behind some of the most shocking tragedies in sports history. To make sense of all this, we're breaking these root causes down into four main areas. First up, the invisible danger. Then, fractions of a second. After that, the physics of velocity. And finally, the Le Mans massacre.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the invisible danger. We're talking about internal failures here. Sometimes a sports tragedy doesn't actually come from a brutal hit, a massive fall, or some crazy high-speed crash. Sometimes it happens completely internally, inside bodies that literally look to be in peak superhuman condition. Take the striking parallel between college basketball star Hank Gathers back in 1990 and international footballer Marc-Vivien Foe in 2003. Both of these guys had just been in intense motion, Gathers right after a dunk and Foe while jogging back to defend. And then they just collapsed mid-game, inert. Nobody even touched them. Yet both of these incredible athletes lost their lives right there in front of thousands of people.
So what actually killed them? Well, the answer is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a bit of a mouthful, but basically it's an abnormal thickening of the heart muscle. And the truly scary part, this silent condition restricts blood flow in such a specific way that under extreme athletic exertion, it triggers a fatal arrhythmia completely without warning. It's literally a microscopic, invisible defect inside an otherwise perfect human engine.
But you see, this danger of the invisible extends to medical bias too. Back in 1923, a college football player named Jack Trice suffered catastrophic internal damage after being trampled on the field. But tragically, the sideline medical staff, they only noticed this highly visible shoulder injury he had. They literally never checked his abdomen or even felt his torso. And that deadly attention bias toward a visible wound, it allowed massive silent internal bleeding to claim his life just hours later. He was completely overlooked by the very professionals who were meant to save him.
Moving on to Section 2, fractions of a second. This is all about freak physical impacts. So here, we're shifting gears from internal illnesses to highly specific anatomical vulnerabilities that get exposed by freak split-second impacts. In this explainer, we're looking at cricketer Philip Hughes and his vertebral artery, rodeo star Lane Frost, whose internal organs were tragically pierced by a bull's horn right after an otherwise perfect 8-second ride, and boxer Benny Perrette, who suffered an irreparable cerebral hemorrhage. Let's zoom in on the exact mechanics of the Philip Hughes tragedy from 2014 because it really came down to a millimeter-level miscalculation. He was expecting a bouncing cricket ball to reach about chest height, but it rose just a tiny bit higher than that, and it struck the exact tiny spot that medical professionals actually called a lethal zone. It's right there below the helmet, exactly where the neck meets the base of the skull, a spot that was entirely unprotected. That direct impact ruptured his vertebral artery in a literal fraction of a second, causing immediate and irreversible brain damage. Now, another totally devastating mechanical entrapment happened in the boxing ring back in 1962. But the thing is, Benny Perrette wasn't killed by a single freak blow. He was killed by the physics of the boxing ring itself. Exhausted in the 12th round, he got cornered, and the ring ropes literally trapped his body, keeping him artificially upright, almost like a doll. His legs had completely given out on him, but the structural physics of those tight ropes prevented him from falling to the mat. And because he couldn't fall, he was exposed to a continuous fatal beating. And that number, 24, is hauntingly recurrent here. Benny Perrette absorbed exactly 24 consecutive punches because the referee failed to intervene in time. But that same number, 24, appears again in another brutal mechanical fall. In 1999, professional wrestler Owen Hart fell exactly 24 meters. He was descending down to the ring, suspended by a cable, but a quick-release mechanism, which was designed to drop him safely just a few feet above the mat, activated prematurely at the very top of the arena. Just a split-second mechanical failure, but it resulted in devastating, fatal internal damage the moment he hit the ground. All right, that brings us to Section 3, the physics of velocity, where there is absolutely zero margin for error. If you follow motorsports, you know the 1994 Imola Grand Prix weekend was just an event shrouded in compounding dread. Friday, Rubens Barrichello suffers a severe crash. Saturday, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger tragically dies. And then Sunday, it's three-time champion Ayrton Senna's turn.
Approaching the Tamburello corner, something mechanically fails at 300 kilometers per hour. Think about that speed for a second. Now, he miraculously manages to brake to about 215 kilometers per hour before hitting the concrete wall, but the kinetic force is still just too much. It's fatal. A piece of the suspension bar actually penetrated the cockpit and struck his helmet with lethal energy.
So, when a human body traveling at that kind of speed stops instantly, the primary enemy is extreme deceleration. This causes what's known as a basilar skull fracture. Basically, it's the sudden, violent separation of the base of the skull from the spine. And this exact, brutal physics took the life of NASCAR legend Dale Earnhardt in 2001. He was going 250 kilometers per hour, actively blocking other cars to protect his son on the final lap when his vehicle was forced into the outside wall. The seatbelt did its job. It held his torso back, but the raw kinetic energy threw his heavy, helmeted head forward, snapping that vital connection in his neck.
And we see that very same high-speed physics manifest in different but equally lethal ways across other sports too. In MotoGP, the rider's body is effectively the chassis. When Marco Simoncelli's bike slid across the track, he suffered a massive double impact from trailing riders at 120 kilometers per hour. The kinetic force was so incredibly immense that it ripped his helmet clean off his head. Or consider the 2010 Winter Olympics. Luger Nodar Kumarita-Shvili was traveling at an astonishing 145 kilometers per hour when he lost stability. He was thrown from his sled directly into an unpadded steel beam. It just goes to show, at extreme speeds, any tiny deviation amplifies into instantaneous fatality.
Which leads us into our final segment, Section 4, the Le Mans Massacre, a true mass casualty disaster.
Now, when extreme sports physics fail outward, they don't just affect the athletes, they can impact unarmed spectators. In 1955, the world witnessed the most terrifying high-speed chain reaction in motorsport history. Here's how it happened. Step 1. Mike Hawthorne brakes abruptly to enter the pits. Step 2. Lance Macklin swerves wildly to avoid rear-ending him. Step 3. This sudden swerve puts Macklin directly in the path of Pierre Levegh, who is coming up fast at over 190 kilometers per hour with absolutely zero reaction time. And then, Step 4. Macklin's uniquely shaped car literally acts as a ramp. Levegh's Mercedes launches nearly 100 meters through the air, flying directly into the densely packed spectator area.
But the nightmare didn't even end with the kinetic impact. It was compounded by the vehicle's actual chemistry. You see, Levegh's Mercedes chassis was made of a lightweight magnesium alloy to keep the car competitive. The problem with that? Magnesium burns at absolutely extreme temperatures. And to make matters exponentially worse, if you try to extinguish a magnesium fire with water, it chemically reacts and explodes even further. So as this car was disintegrating, it was showering down as inextinguishable burning metal shrapnel right onto the crowd.
The result of that horrific physical and chemical equation is just incredibly stark. 82. At least 82 spectators lost their lives that day. It's a massive, deeply sobering contrast to the individual tragedies we covered earlier. And it absolutely proves that under the wrong conditions, sporting mechanics can instantly transform from entertainment into a mass casualty disaster.
So, looking back at all of this, from microscopic failures in a perfectly conditioned athlete's heart to the horrific physics of burning magnesium flying at 190 kilometers per hour, it really leaves us with one unavoidable question. Can extreme sports ever truly be safe? Or is the inherent risk of tragedy, that razor's edge athletes walk on every single time they compete, a fundamental, inescapable part of the very spectacle we tune in to watch? I'll leave you to ponder that one.